Carroll Quigley. Who was Carroll Quigley?
Well, Carroll Quigley was a very establishment type character. He's the type of guy who would be trained by Rhodes Scholars and educated at Princeton and Harvard and taught at these places. Was a consultant for the military Department of Defense. Lived in Georgetown, taught at Georgetown's School of Foreign Service. So he's a very establishment type of guy. And he was very close to people in the Council on Foreign Relations. And he actually had a whistleblower who was inside this secret society group of people in America and Britain who wanted to see America brought back into the British Empire. So it's a long story. In fact, Quigley's book is like 1,300 pages. And the first book that this Professor Quigley wrote was in 1948, and it was called The Anglo-American Establishment. And it's a book about this thick, not very big, couple hundred pages, very clear and concise and to the point about this plan to bring America back into the British Empire, the people in the plan, how they were funded, how they had taken root in America, and how America was on a collision course with being used as the spearhead for globalism and a new world order. Quigley was too scared to lose his career to put that book in print. So that book, it's written in 1948. It doesn't come out till 1981 after Quigley dies. Quigley, 20 years later, almost 19 years later. So he spends the next 19 years researching the Council on Foreign Relations archives, which they invited him in to do, to kind of be their in-house historian, so that people on the Anglo-American side had a clean idea of what the actual history was, because everything being fed to the American public was, BS, for lack of a better, more descriptive phrase. That is an accurate phrase. So Quigley writes this book called Tragedy and Hope, A History of the World in Our Time. And like I said, it's 1,300 pages. And in there, a few select pages provide enormous insight, credible insight into how the world works. So this is 1966. We all should have heard about this book by now, right? Well, in like 1967, Macmillan, the publisher, destroys the plates to the book, so there's no second printing. They destroy the plates to the book. They republish the book, but only the second half. So the whole how it happened is taken out, and they're like, here's what happened later. And it's republished in 1968 as a book called The World Since 1939, A History, which is very rare. You don't need to get it because you could just buy the whole book, Tragedy and Hope, today. It's been reprinted as of 2004. But for like 30 years, this book was pretty hard to get a hold of. Very hard. And for good reason. He spills the beans in there. And then he does an interview with the New York Times complaining about how they censored his book and lied to him and all this other stuff. So even though he's not a believer in the conspiracy per se, he's the historian of it and was definitely definitely adversely affected by it. So I don't necessarily, I'm not a big fan of the man, because I'm just like looking into the work and what are the facts. I find that a lot of things can get muddied by generating unnecessary opinions on people who aren't even here anymore. So what can we learn from Quigley? What was useful, and how can we go forward? So when it came time to name my site, I launched in 2009 Tragedy and Hope, because that was something that I knew even 50 years from now, people would still need to know about that story. It's still adversely affecting them.
Oh, so there was a woman arguing with Tom Woods who said, no, the Democrats have the moral high ground as opposed to the Republicans. The problem is Republicans. Bill Clinton's personal teacher at Oxford was a guy named Carroll Quigley. Carroll Quigley wrote in a book, Tragedy and Hope, that there's a conspiracy to get the two parties to be so similar in policy, but have little differences and really focus on them. So you can, quote, throw the rascals out without there being any policy changes. He cites the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the CFR and the Round Table Group, and Milner's Kindergarten as the people behind this. But about that tweet, I just asked her, okay, let's just go through the big ones. Which party supports the Federal Reserve having a monopoly on the currency and a coercive state monopoly on interest rates? Who supports the drug war? Who supports regulation? Which party supports gun control? Trump just implemented a bump stock ban. Reagan implemented an automatic assault rifle ban. Who supports intervention in the healthcare market? Bush implemented Medicare Part D, and we know where the Democrats stand. Who supports the drug war? Who supports killing civilians overseas? Who supports taxation and all this other stuff? Everything else is trivial compared to that.
Imagine the following. A well-respected and prominent US historian spends 20 years researching and occasionally working with an elite network of powerful individuals. This network has successfully infiltrated the economic, political, and opinion-forming agencies of the most powerful nations on the planet. Their goal: to secretly control all habitable portions of the world, while maintaining the illusion of representative government. Would this be a story that every citizen has a right to hear? Tragedy and Hope 101 provides readers an introduction to the groundbreaking research of Carroll Quigley. Professor Quigley not only spent decades researching and writing about those who secretly control the machinery of our representative governments, he was permitted to examine their secret papers. He was invited in, but he ultimately betrayed their trust when he exposed their plans and their methods. Like Professor Quigley, we believe that everyone has the right to know the true history of the past 100 years, and the true nature of the political system we're living under. For that reason, anyone can read the English version of Tragedy and Hope 101 for free at tragedyandhope.info, and soon other languages will be freely available as well. If you've yet to discover Quigley's work, take a moment and do so now at tragedyandhope.info.